How do Inuit people not get sick from eating raw meat? Raw meat being raw in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is that raw meat has the potential to become a breeding ground for dangerous bacteria and other nasties. When you cook a piece of meat, you're killing off the harmful microorganisms that could potentially make it toxic if left alone. But bacteria needs time to grow, so the more fresh your meat, the less likely you'll get sick. The rate at which bacteria can grow does also depend on the type of animal in question. Chicken, for example, is fairly porous in comparison, which lets bacteria grow pretty quickly, while beef is tough, which prevents bacterial growth. This is why you can eat steak at a much rarer, i.e. closer to raw, condition than you can chicken. Bacteria also doesn't grow very well in super cold conditions, which is another advantage for the Inuit people since their land tends to get very cold in winter. When Vilhjalmur Stefansson visited the Inuit in 19,131,918, he adopted their mostly meat diet and did great. He did say, though, that a majority of their meat was cooked, boiled. Actually, they don't get sick, because that meat is eaten immediately, like a couple minutes after the animal is killed, or it is immediately frozen for later, and never gets to room temperature before being eaten. But the meat in modern society, which takes several processes, then is transported and sits on the grocery store shelves, had time to start growing bacteria, which then must be killed off first by cooking, prior to eating. The biggest risk for whole muscle meat that's cleaned properly is parasites. Those are irritating, but most non-human mammals carry a certain parasite load and are generally fine. Humans did until recently. My mother is from Khabarovsk. Her father is part of an indigenous group there, Ulchi, and one of their delicacies is raw salmon dipped in vinegar. They would fish salmon and freeze them during winter. Then they'll carve a piece off the frozen fish and dip it in vinegar and eat it like chips. When the temperature is cold enough, it just stops the bacteria from contaminating the meat, I think. There's lots of answers in this thread about bacteria, but what about worms? Sushi, man? Several factors. 1. Meat and fish freezes very quickly after killing it, and that preserves it from spoiling. Drying in thin strips or over a smoky fire is also used to preserve meat and fish. 2. The meat is killed and butchered by hand with care. If you avoid contaminating meat with bacteria from the animal's digestive tract, there's a lot less pathogenic bacteria to worry about. 3. Controlling conditions carefully can result in aged, cured and even fermented meat or fish. Healthy populations of friendly bacteria will make the product uninhabitable to pathogenic bacteria. If I lived in the freezer, and a moose lived in the freezer with me, and I killed that moose and butchered it immediately, there would be no time wherein microbes would have a chance to grow on that moose. The Arctic is basically a very large freezer. Eating raw meat isn't unhealthy. Eating spoiled meat is. Tartar, Kuba, Ossenwurst, Koi soy. Plenty of cultures have their raw meat dishes. The reason it's safe is because of how raw meat can make you sick. Raw meat is flesh. It is part of a corpse that you've chopped off. There is bacteria on it, and without an immune system, that bacteria will replicate and spread unhindered. However, it takes time for bacteria to procreate. If you eat the meat fresh, there just won't be enough bacteria around to harm you. Fresh raw meat equals yummy. Old raw meat equals food poisoning. It's cold enough that bacteria isn't growing on it. Wait until you find out what sushi is. I read this as Inuit people, like TurboTax employees. Fresh raw meat equals yum. Inuit means people. You said people. The singular term is Inuit. The human stomach is one of the most acidic in the entire animal kingdom, even more acidic than popular predators like lions and tigers. This shows an evolutionary adaptation to eating large amounts of meat, and also for the stomach to deal with certain amount of bacteria and parasites. Most food poisoning in the USA comes via contaminated vegetables and not meat. The same way you won't get sick from eating raw meat. Every culture in history has had its own raw meat dish. They've just been erased because they don't fit our modern industrial processed food scheme. As a German, I can tell you that a good portion of us consider raw minced pork a part of our breakfast. https en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/med. We don't have any health problems because of that. Many parasites in raw fish and sometimes animals. I don't either.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Paracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.